So, a very good afternoon to everyone. My name is Ahmed, and on behalf of the ICP Center at Wildlife Institute of India, I welcome you all to the day two of our World Wetland Day webinar series. Yesterday, we had insightful discussions on everybody loves to reclaim wetlands and what can we do about it. That video is uploaded on our YouTube channel, and if you haven't watched it yet, you can check it out there. So today we have with us Ms. Parveen Shaikh, a distinguished wildlife biologist dedicated to the science-based conservation of India's threatened bird species. Since joining the Bombay Natural History Society in 2012 as a research fellow, Parveen has amassed extensive experience in avian conservation. In 2016, Parveen initiated groundbreaking research on the endangered Indian skimmer within the National Chambal Sanctuary. Supported by the Conservation Leadership Program and BirdLife International, her work identified critical threats to the species, including nest predation, trampling, flooding, sandstorms, and human-induced disturbances such as damming and sand mining. To address these challenges, Parveen launched the Helping Skimmers Skim conservation program, featuring the innovative Guardians of Skimmer initiative. This initiative engages local communities as nest guardians, providing round-the-clock protection to nesting colonies and significantly improving nest survival rates. Beyond her work with the Indian skimmer, Parveen has contributed to various studies, including research on bird responses to tidal rhythms in Navi Mumbai's wetlands and assessments of the impact of windmills on birds and bats in India. Her dedication to ecology, conservation, and citizen science is evident in her diverse publications and collaborative efforts. Parveen aims to replicate her successful conservation model to bolster efforts for Indian skimmers and other sandbar nesting birds across India's river systems. Her talk, titled Sand Skimmers and the River, the conservation story of Chambal, will delve into her journey and the impactful work to preserve these remarkable species. So for our viewers, after the presentation, we'll be having a question answer session. So if you have any questions, comments, or suggestions, you can please drop them in our chat box. So without any further ado, I invite Ms. Parveen to begin her presentation. Over to you.
Thank you so much, and thanks for this long introduction. Yeah, I'll be talking mainly rivers as wetlands during this talk, and mainly talking about one indicator species that we selected to work on. Obviously, the idea was the conservation of the threatened species, but yeah, it is quite an indicator of a clean river system, and so we indirectly are working on the larger habitat, which is the river. The title is Sand Skimmers and the River. It's the work has been done in River Chambal, and these three words describe mainly the entire landscape that we are working in. So Chambal River, it's one of the cleanest river in the country, but yeah, it has been very infamous due to the stories that it has in past, and a large contribution goes to our cinema that has always highlighted. The stories of the dacoits from this region, whether it's Bandit Queen, whether it's Pansing Toma, these stories have been part of this region, but something to look into is the river system. It's one of the cleanest river in the country, and this river has something very unique about it. It's a valley river. So the reason that it's a valley, because the adjoining area is something very particular habit called as ravines, or also called as bihar. In this video, you will see the larger landscape in the aerial view. So this ravines, form the catchment area of the river, and these are small mounds and gullies that are intricate systems that are formed by sand and mud. So all the rainfall, obviously it's a bit of dry area, but whatever rainfall that falls in this area, so this is the catchment area that slowly discharge the water into the river. So it's a big large drainage system. And Chambal is when people have visited this river system, you all will see that it's a very sandy river. It has large, broad sandbanks which are there. But this is more of the midstream and the downstream part of the river. The upstream part of the river is still, quite. There are rapids, there are boulders, there are rocky patches, and it's only that the midstream part of the river, like from the Morena and Dholpur part in MP and Rajasthan, that the river becomes completely sandy. In recently, this river has been very popular for the ongoing illegal sand mining that is happening on very large scale on the bank of the river. As you can see in this aerial footage, also that there are tractors which are lined up to extract sand. It's not only from the bank, but on the edges they are dredging the sand from it. So Chambal is approximately 1,000 kilometer of the river. It originates from Madhya Pradesh, near Indore. Mao is the place in the Indore district. The river is one of the unique thing about this river. This river flows north and northeast. If you see most of the rivers in the country, they flow southwards. And so this river has four major dams upstream, three of them being a hydroelectric dam and the Kota Barrage being the irrigation dam. It's a pre-independence dam and very large capacity, so they kind of hold the maximum water of River Chambal. The Chambal first passes in MP, then enters to Rajasthan, and again enters to Madhya Pradesh, and it runs on the border of three states, that is in Madhya Pradesh, Rajasthan, and Uttar Pradesh. And it's a first riverine system in the country that's been protected as a national Chambal sanctuary. The national Chambal sanctuary is approximately a 600 kilometer of river that's protected from a small stretch, near the Kota part, and then from Keshoripatan till the river confluence with the river Yamuna in Uttar Pradesh. And the main reason for protecting this as a sanctuary was for the unique crocodilian species known as ghadial. The largest known, breeding population is on this river system. Obviously, this crocodilian species is called as ghadial because of the snout that has a ghada kind of snout that it has. And but apart from this crocodilian species, this river even holds a lot of other aquatic biodiversity, whether it's critically endangered turtles, whether it's threatened fish species, and there are a lot of other bird species, endangered species that it hosts, and one of them being Indian skimmer. So there are three species of skimmers in the world. The largest being the black skimmers in America, and the smallest being the African skimmer in the Africa, and the mid-sized one being the Indian skimmer, which is in the Southeast Asian distribution is in Southeast Asia. The species, why they're called as skimmer, because they have something very unique. If you see the bill, most of the birds that you might have seen, where they have the bill where the upper bill and the lower beak is of same size. But over here, something very unique is that the lower bill of this bird is elongated than the upper bill, and it's laterally flattened like a scissor. So the old name of this species was also scissor bill. And why the word skimmer comes for this species are they use the lower bill for skimming on the surface of water. They tear the surface of water, and when they feel the fish on the tip of the lower bill, that's when the upper bill snap on the fishes and they catch fish. They're piscivorous throughout their life, except that the early stages of life where they feed on small crustaceans also. And you know, uh, they feed on fishes of a particular size. These are like quite young fishes or adult fishes of that size. So they kind of even indicate a flowing system and a healthy fish population in the river system. So Indian skimmer at the moment is endangered on the IUCN Red List with approximately less than 3,000 mature individuals estimated in the entire distribution range. The species was very widely distributed in entire Southeast Asia, but now it's restricted to Pakistan, India, and Bangladesh. Something interesting about the distribution is though there are birds in India and Bangladesh, the breeding records are only in India. Bangladesh, a large population spend go during the non-breeding season. During the breeding season, they return back to India for breed. Pakistan has handful of numbers, and Myanmar has very less than like probably a couple of birds left. So India has the high responsibility of conserving these species. And if you see, these are the data that has been plotted from the eBird records. So historically, the species, the black dots, if you say, it was quite widely distributed, and it has now got very restricted to certain states and certain river system. The pink dots are the recent distribution that is from 2010 to 2020 onwards. And if you see that the largest distribution recorded are from Chambal, because Chambal is one of the river system that holds the largest population of this species. So even the recent State of India Birds 2023, defined as a high conservation required species, and the annual trend is declining. The species is very restricted, and there is still quite an insufficient data to understand a long-term trend of the species. It's been recently uplisted as a Schedule 1 species on the Wildlife Protection Act. And so this species comes on river only for nesting. Apart from that, they use other wetlands. So what is something unique that that brings them to the river? They come back to sandy rivers to nest, because when in summer the water level decreases, these are the sandbars that get exposed. This is the aerial view and how the sandbar looks like. So this sandbar, which are surrounded by water, is the required habitat for this species. They nest between March and June, and they nest in colonies. So this is how the entire breeding cycle of the species look like. They start nesting from March, and the cycle goes till June. It's approximately 2 months that is needed. So the birds start arriving on the rivers during December, November, December, and they all come and colonize by January and February. If you see the species in February, the birds will be performing a courtship ritual where male will be doing a head bobbing in front of the female. When they have paired together, the male will bring a fish and feed it to the female and then mate with the female. Once the mating has been done, both the parents will search for a nesting site on the sandbar that they have selected for nesting. So they will keep on going and creating small depressions of the nest, which is called as trial nesting, and they will try to find out the perfect substratum, perfect temperature and humidity in the soil where they have to lay the nest. Once the nest site is selected, they will lay the eggs. The eggs are not laid, entire clutch is not laid together. They lay one egg at a time, and then they lay the second egg, and then the third egg. And the sequence in which the eggs are hatched, that's the same sequence eggs are laid, that's the same sequence that egg will be hatched. It takes approximately 3 to 4 weeks for the entire incubation period. And something very unique about their incubation is that since the sand is so hot, Chambal is a completely dry and arid areas, and the temperature in the daytimes during peak summer goes up to 40-45 degree, and the sand almost become 55 degrees Celsius hot. So the birds have to continuously wet their belly and keep on cooling the eggs to maintain an optimum temperature of incubation. Once the chicks are hatched or the entire clutch is hatched, the chicks leave the nest site and they try to use the edges of the sandbar, but the temperature is lower than the mid sandbar because of the water that is there at the edges. And the chicks will take again 3 to 4 weeks to fly out of the nesting island to take their first flight, that means to fledge out. So the chicks look very different once they fledge out. They still have the bills which are both equal length. It's when a couple of weeks after they take flight that the lower bill starts growing in length. Even in that, then the birds, when they have fledged out and they're ready to fly, and when the flood season comes in the river, the birds, along with their parents, leave the nesting sites and they go and migrate to other places. It's very easy to identify the first year juvenile because the tip will be still black and not yellow and orange like the parents. So this is how the nest looks like. Let me give a disclaimer. These videos have been taken only for the study purpose. So we don't encourage anybody going to the nesting sites and engaging into taking videos of the birds and approaching the nest so closely. So if you see, the parents have wet their belly and they're coming and sitting on the chick and the egg. Still, the egg is present in the nest. That's the reason the chick has not left the nest site. If the entire clutch will hatch, that time the chicks will leave the nest site and use the edge of the sandbar. And if you see, one parent has gone to wet the belly and come back, and then it will relieve the other parent to do the same thing, and they will keep on doing this thing throughout the day during the entire incubation period. And the nest is just a small depression of approximately 30 centimeter wide that has been created to lay the eggs. So what we do, our work involves basically monitoring the population as well as monitoring the nest survival. So how do we do the monitoring population? So during the Feb, when the birds have completely colonized and they are stick to their nesting sites, they don't move much to another nesting site. So what we do along with Madhya Pradesh Forest Department, we survey the entire river in 13 days. And Madhya Pradesh has been doing the longest monitoring of the river system since ever. And this survey has been happening since past more than 30 years, and it's been done in the same way every time in February. It's not only that the birds are counted, but there are other species like gharial, turtles, everything, all the aquatic biodiversity is focused on and population monitoring is done. We focus on skimmers, and every day when we do the survey by boat, that is like, for an example, if this is a day one stretch, we start from point A and we go to point B. The second day we'll start from point B and go to point C. The stretches are approximately of 40 to 50 kilometers, depending upon the logistic challenges that are there on the river system. And once we have done, so if, whenever we come across a colony, we do a count, and we completely count them. Since we have a lot of birds that are marked with leg bands, I will show you how do the bands look like. So we even confirm whether the colonies are mixing and we are doing double count of certain colonies. And once we have done that thing, we tally what is the population and how the distribution of this population is there on the river. Um, so, like, since this is the data from 2017 to 21, this is how the colonies have been distributed. Mainly, if you see that the large number of colonies are there into midstream and downstream because of the habitat. It's quite suitable. The sandy habitat is there from this point to downwards, and there are only mid stretches of sandy river which is there in upstream. That's the reason the colonies are not very densely reported from this place. And as you see, some of the colonies are regularly reported every year because the birds do have a very strong site fidelity. They come back to the same places where they had come back last year. And that's why river system or any other wetland system is so important for bird, because the birds, whether it's nesting or whether it's wintering, when birds do have strong site fidelity toward these sites, and they tend to come back to the same places. So there's high need of conservation of these places for the survival of species. And we also do nest success monitoring. So how we do that, so whenever a nest is initiated, we mark the nest. If you see over a small ice cream stick is used with a with a data written on the marker, that is the nest unique number and the date when the nest has been initiated. And then we visit this nest site every alternate days. Some places we do it every day where there are chances of high loss. We monitor it daily, and we just go and report what is the status, whether the eggs are hatched or whether they are predated or whether they are trampled, and we note down the data. Once the chicks are hatched, we mark them with an alloy ring, which has a unique number, and so that we can go and check the survival of the chicks and how many chicks fledged from the clutch. So the nesting success is calculated at two stages, that is hatching success and fledging success, to understand the overall survival of the nest. And we do address the causes of hatching and fledging, so that we understand what are the particular reasons that the losses happen because of. So I'll just give you a brief data about 2018 and 19 when we were monitoring. We monitored almost more than 200 nests in both the years, having 705 eggs in 2018 and having 865 eggs in 2019. Something which was very alarming was the hatching success. Only 23% of the eggs hatched in 2018 and 41% in 2019. And after hatching, there was again a high loss, like an 85% chicks loss was happened, and 27% of the check loss happened, 12% and 27% in 2019. So if you see these numbers, like the causes of hatching failure were mainly due to either predation by jackals, predation by dogs, trampling by cattle, disturbance by people. And majorly, it was all human oriented causes that were responsible for this loss happening. And if you see, like when the birds start nesting, this is what the sandbar looks like. And as the nesting season progresses, the sandbars get connected to the bank because the water level goes down. The river is already dammed, and there are lift irrigations which are there. And obviously, the high evaporation rate contributes to the decreasing water level. And that's when the sandbank get connected, which leads to, and also obviously, which leads to high predation and trampling pressure. But if there is a sudden release of water, that does causes drowning of this nesting island. So even a high water is not good, even a low water is not good. There's an optimal water level that is required for this species once they have initiated the nesting. And if the water level goes down, as I said, the predation risk increases. In this picture, if you can see, free ranging dogs get easy access to the sandbars and they predate on eggs as well as chicks. And this region is highly dependent on livestock. So during in summer, livestock spend a quite time on the river, and that's how unintentionally the livestock trample the eggs and chicks. And the upcoming alarming threat to this entire landscape, this entire river system, is high level of illegal sand mining that is happening. That even there are instances where the sand miners have completely mined the nesting sites, and they have disturbed the entire nesting colony, leaving the birds nowhere to go during the peak nesting season. So what during our work we realized, like by 2020, that the species is endangered and the nesting success is very low. It was less than 15% that was surviving during Yes, 18, 19, and 20. So we thought of initiating a Nest Guardian program under our Helping Skimmers Skim Conservation umbrella program. So what does the Nest Guardian program does? It's categorize the sandbars into least vulnerable, which are like properly isolated. Then vulnerable at later stages. They're quite isolated from the bank, but we know as the nesting season is of 2 months, and as the nesting season will progress, these islands will get connected to the bank. And then the islands which are most vulnerable because they are very close to the nesting sandbar, to the bank. So we decided to deploy local community members which are trained and then deployed as a nest guardians for this nesting colony. Plus we will fence the nesting colony to a certain extent so that the dogs and jackals can't reach the island. And for the vulnerable at later stage, we just deployed fencing to understand how the results of fencing are. And so this is how the nesting colony distribution was there, and where we deployed community members and where we deployed only fencing. So we selected 10 sites, of red category, 7 sites of yellow category, and 5 sites of green category to monitor in 2022. And so we were doing monitoring on the control sites where we have not done any intervention, as well as the guarded and fence sites to understand how's the nest survival improving if we do intervention. And to our surprise, the overall nest survival, like the hatching success on the guarded island specifically, went to 85%, and the fledging success went to 65%, which is extremely high as compared to the control island of the red category, because we had almost 0% survival over there. So I'll give you briefly a result. I don't want to bombard you with a lot of data over here, but if you see that this first four nesting islands were protected by community members as well as fenced, whereas the 5 of them of red category were not done any intervention. And if you see that we had a hatching and fledging success over here, whereas C3, C4, C5, which are the last three colonies, had 0% hatching success. And we had some hatching on C1 and C2, but we had 0% fledging success. So the overall nest survival of this control island of the red category becomes zero, but we did have some survival on the guarded island. And if you see the causes of failure, that because there was definitely some failure that happened on the guarded island also, but all the causes were related to natural phenomena like sandstorm, like desertion, which is a natural process where the parents do reject certain eggs. Probably it's not fertile, or probably it's not incubated well. And then we had an inundation because we had an unfortunate incident of water release that happened from Kota Barrage in 2022. But if you see the causes of failure that happened on the islands where we had not guarded, are trampling that happened because of livestock, predation by dogs, predation by jackal, and human disturbance, which we completely eradicated by protection and fencing. So all the causes were natural, which indicates that this the intervention does play an important role for survival of the species. Similarly, what I've explained, the causes of hatching failure, if you see the causes of fledging failures were also all oriented to the nature, like desertion, inundation, and some unknown reasons that were there. But again, on C1 and C2, where we had very small hatching success, also failed completely by predation of jackal and predation of dog. So this indicates that we could improvise the nest survival on very vulnerable side, but if we start involving community members and we deploy fencing to keep the predators away. And this is the population trend of skimmers from 2003 onwards that I've just tried to show the past 20 years data. So there were around 300 birds. 2017 was the first time that we started working on Chambal, and there were 412 birds. And if you see, there was a gradual increase that happened till 2020. In 2021, we started this program on a small scale, and now we have increased the scale. So if you see, there has been a steep increase in the population. 2024, we counted 840 births. So that's almost the double the population since 2017 onwards. Obviously, our intervention started from 2020 onwards. So previously, if you see that increase was there, there was a gradual increase because some of the nests do survive and chicks get added up into the population. But now the population has started showing a steep increase, as well as there are birds that are getting recorded from the other river system where they were historically present. So yeah, these birds do migrate. We had marked certain individuals at Chambal, and they. So this is how the flag looks like, and we have marked some more than 100 adults and more than 500 nestlings. And yes, they do have a sexual dimorphism when you capture them. The morphometry measurements when you take, and we got resighting from Bangladesh and from Gujarat. So the population goes into two majorly directions in west coast as well as in east coast. So they use coastal wetlands during this time. So this is how the coastal wetlands are also important for protection of this species, not only rivers. And it's very interesting that birds do come back to the same site for nesting, and there are also chicks that return back to the nesting site. So for this example, this bird, if you see, it has a flag in the leg which say H04. It's born in 2018, and since then this bird has been coming every year to nest in Chambal. So how rivers really play important for species and for the coming generations of the species to host them for nesting. So yes, safeguarding nesting colonies by the community members is a very suitable intervention, and only fencing our results were not that reliable, and we need to explore the modification in design. And but sudden unplanned release of water from upstream dam can be really bad for nothing can survive. We really want to continue this conservation efforts in the river system, and we even want to try it on other river system to see how we can improvise the nest survival. And this is our future plan to upscale this and experiment some artificial floating sandbars on the rivers to improvise the nest survival. And we plan to do systematic survey of other potential river systems. Acknowledgement and thanks to all the donors and the forest department who has been supporting this work. And I want to really take a minute to thank all the team members, from our trappers to researchers to colleagues to interns who have worked throughout the time. In this river system, it's a very challenging landscape to work, but everybody has been a pillar of this project. Without them, it wouldn't have been possible. And special thanks to the community members who have been protecting these birds. So yeah, thank you so much. I don't know how we are doing on time, but I had a small 4 minutes film to show about this work. If we are good on time, I can play it, or
Yes,
else
sure, sure.
yeah, no?
Approved.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. So this is a small movie that we did recently. In the Madhya Pradesh, showing the Nest Guardian program.
The work we do is powered by supporters like you. National Chambal Sanctuary is crucial to the survival of an endangered ground nesting bird, the Indian skimmer. Once fairly common, only about 3,000 adults are believed to exist today, and this number is likely to decline without urgent action. The skimmer is easy to identify thanks to its unique, extra-long lower bill. It earns its name from the way it skims over the water, plowing across the surface in search of fish and crustaceans. Since 2017, Parveen Shaikh, a conservation scientist with the Bombay Natural History Society, has been studying skimmers in the Chambal with the support of the Forest Department. In early summer, small islands emerge as the water level in the Chambal River drops, providing a relatively safe place for the birds to breed. The nest is just a depression in the sand, and a clutch usually comprises 3 to 5 eggs. Nesting season can be very harsh in the Chambal, and at midday, the temperature can reach a scorching 49 degrees Celsius or 120 degrees Fahrenheit. The eggs can spoil in such extreme heat. Luckily, the parents know exactly what to do. Wetting their belly feathers in the river, they take turns to keep the eggs cool. During the hottest part of the day, the parent birds switch places every few minutes to maintain an optimum incubation temperature. When the eggs begin to hatch around 3 weeks, both parents work tirelessly to feed their brood. It's amazing how they manage to catch fish of the right size for the chicks to swallow. Devoted parental care was once enough to ensure the skimmer's survival. But today, nesting colonies face many man-made threats. People walking on a nesting island can scare away incubating birds, exposing eggs to the scorching heat. When the river level drops further, livestock can walk across, with disastrous consequences for eggs and chicks. Free-ranging dogs are a serious menace, and even one or two can wipe out every egg or chick. To mitigate these threats, Parveen developed a conservation program in collaboration with the Forest Department that employs local people as nest guardians. Since 2022, local teams trained by BNHS have zealously guarded a few nesting sites during the breeding season. Their constant vigilance has made a dramatic difference in keeping intruders away. When necessary, they erect temporary fences to keep dogs and cattle out. These simple and cost-effective measures have significantly increased breeding success. We need your support to survey, protect, and monitor more nesting colonies. Together, we can help prevent the needless extinction of these remarkable birds.
Thank you so much, and over to you.
Thank you very much. That was truly fascinating. So I'll just go to the chat box and let's see
Yes, yes,
if you have any questions. So I will put the questions on the display so that you can also read them.
yes.
So we have a first question from Samiha Pathan. So can you see it?
Yes. It is
Yes.
evident that skimmer have nest site fidelity sandbanks. You have cited causes for nesting success. However, do you also fear climate change issues impacting? Yeah, it's a quite important thing actually. So we have seen that the heat waves that the frequency of heat waves have suddenly increased in past 2 years specifically. So we saw in 23 and 24 that the peak hatching success was actually coincidentally with the peak heat waves, and we lost number of chicks because when they hatch and if the temperature is very high and the parents are not able to attend, they can't make it. That is one thing about the climate change, and the other change. And the main reason is that so very large population of Indian skimmers use the coastal intertidal areas, like specifically in Bangladesh. There are more than 1,000 birds that spend their non-breeding season over there, and there has been observation of increasing sea level over there, where even during the low tide, the sandbars in between the mudflat that gets exposed are decreasing year by year, and there are not enough of space left for the birds to roost during the daytime. So
Okay.
during the low tide time. So when I say roosting, because skimmers are a very crepuscular species. They are active during the dawn and dusk time. So they are purely nocturnal. It is during the breeding season that you see them active during the daytime when they are nesting, but during the non-breeding season, they are completely roosting during the daytime. So they need those safe spaces in the intertidal area to roost. And it has been observed in Bangladesh that this, the increasing sea level might risk those habitat. So yeah, that's how climate change is one of the factor that's going to affect the species,
So there is
specifically the habitat.
there's an extension to this question. I'll put it. So this was the last line.
Yeah,
So it was
nesting site fertility
impacting
and success rate. Yeah, so the thing is, so it's not only nesting site fidelity, as I said, it's also site fidelity to the non-breeding sites. Since the birds that we have marked, we have seen that tag birds visiting the same site during the non-breeding sites also.
Okay.
And for the success rate, I have told you that how the heat waves causing affecting the nest survival, and that's how the nesting site fidelity will also get impacted, because rivers are do getting affected by climate change, because especially not Chambal, since it's not a very glacier fed river, but Ganga is one of the river that again has a very good population of skimmers, so that might be one of the factors affecting it. Whether how the sandbar exposure should also coincide with the nesting time, so the timing gets off and that completely offs the nesting cycle.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So we have another question. I'll
Yes.
put it on the screen. So it's from Ayan Datta.
Yeah.
So you have you seen any changing in nesting pattern and behaviors
Behavior by the
in the skimmer
skimmers
in
in
order
order
to combat
to.
threats by
So
humans?
the thing is, the river system, like especially to the Chambal, we have seen that to avoid some of the sites where the predation. So obviously, birds do take clues from the previous nesting success. So
Yes.
we have seen that birds have shifted. They have completely, left some of the nesting sandbar where there was a very high predation pressure. See, they can still bear trampling pressure because that doesn't give you 100% loss, but predation gives you 100% loss, and we have seen that birds leave the nesting sandbar completely and they don't come to that places next year. But also we have to see that we are at that year that era, probably birds don't have enough of sandbars left.
So,
Okay, the way that the sand mining and the water flow is getting modified, we as the sandbars, good sandbars are reducing in number. So they are kind of forced to even nest in suboptimum habitat because they don't have an optimum habitat to select. But
mhm.
we have absolutely seen birds not coming to the islands where they had got a very large loss due to predation previous year. In fact, in the same nesting season also, if there is a predation pressure that has increased on the nesting island, the birds completely abandon the nesting colony and they will not nest on that. They will find other sandbar to nest. If there is a trampling pressure or if there is a disturbance by people, they will tend to give a second clutch on that island, but not if there is a high predation pressure.
Okay. So there's another question from Ayan also. So I'll just put it there. So it's regarding the sand mining.
Yeah. Yeah, so recently there has been an attempt of denotifying small stretches of the river where the biodiversity of presence is low as compared to the high biodiversity hotspots of the river, so that there is a legal sand mining that happens. Obviously, that also will be in a limit from these stretches to avoid sand mining, which is happening rampantly everywhere on the river. So
Hmm.
that is one measure that has been taken by the Madhya Pradesh Forest Department. And apart from that, yeah, there has been some kind of control of patrolling the rivers and kind of creating some dredging so that in the ravine so that the paths are not connected anymore to the river. But let me tell you very frankly, the scale is so large that it's not forest department or anything, but it's so the local presence and the local pressure is so high that they really want to extract this thing. And I don't know, you can't blame them. We are the country which is so much high on our real estate, that we are so much in a development phase that sand is one of the resource that is basic for any construction. And it's not that Gwalior, Morena, or Chambal is using this sand. This is going all the way till NCR. So, it is such a required resources. I think we should find an alternate for sand if we want sand mining to get decreased.
Uh, Thank you very much. So he was asking it, especially if they're
Yeah,
any
especially
international
to the
training.
breeding season, they kind of try to make people that don't mind from this side, like where there is actually nesting happening of birds or gharial or other turtle species. But apart from that, the pressure of mining is high. It has become almost a livelihood for a group of community over there. Like, and people don't care if they lose their life. In fact, a lot of officers have lost their life in going for stopping the mining. Yeah.
So there's another question from our side.
Hmm.
Yeah.
See, I think protected areas do play a role, okay, and well-managed protected areas is what really helps in a species survival. Like Chambal is one of the river system. We don't have many river systems which are protected. In fact, we have very handful of rivers that are protected as sanctuaries, and so I will compare because I work on another river system which is not protected, which
Mhm.
is Mahanadi. But obviously, Mahanadi don't have a high pressure of predation or trampling because it's a river. Their livelihood is fishing, and most of the people are not engaged in livelihood in livestock over there. But if you see their Chambal being protected, at least fishing is completely banned in the sanctuary. It's a very small scale that happens, and that also for consumption. So there is no large scale fishing that is happening, which is really good for all the species because whether it's gharial, whether it's skimmers or black-bellied tern, because that's the major food that is provided. Secondly, I think it is quite managed for patrolling level, so people know what is happening on the river systems. Or else, it's not a scenario on other rivers. We really don't know what's the status of biodiversity over there. That's how protected areas come into the picture of having some structure to the area, and having some baseline to understand how the species is performing in the area. So that's how a sanctuary do play a quite important role. Yeah, there are obviously there is a lot of scope for better management, and I think that will happen in course of time. As soon as you progress, you learn new things. So yeah.
Wonderful. So this one last question.
Yes.
Yes. So this is from Sakshi Rana.
Yeah, so are the local community members being given any incentives and how did you choose them? Yes, so all the local community members who are engaged as Nest Gardens in this program are paid incentives. They are paid incentives for first 3 years. They are only paid incentives during the nesting season. For after 3 years, if we engage the same people, they are paid incentives throughout the year, like a 50% incentives in the off season and a 100% incentive in the peak nesting season. So the criteria for choosing them is mainly wherever the nesting sites are, the local community member has to be from the nearest village. We only deploy people from a distant village if we don't find any individual interested in this kind of work. And so mainly we take people who are kind of interested and give that dedication to the work. Training is important component, so we don't see how much knowledge individuals have about the species or anything. It's mainly we see whether they have that empathy towards species and whether they are encouraged to do this kind of work, because it's very difficult to sit in a 40-45 degree temperature in a basic camping setup on the bank of the river and continuously doing this work. So initially when the program started, it was mainly protection, but now it has progressed to that the Nest Guardians do the monitoring part also. They collect data, they upload the data on WhatsApp group. Every team has one smartphone which is given to them where they can collect the data. This is the basic criteria whether people can give those 8 hours of day to work and whether they have some inclination towards the idea of conservation of the species by this work.
True, true, true.
Yeah.
Wonderful. So if I may ask, so it's just one question from my side. It's more
Yes.
of a personal question.
Yeah.
So I mean, what has been the inspiration behind working for the Indian skimmers? I mean, for
Okay,
you?
so initially it was,
How did it started?
yeah,
How did it started?
yeah,
Yes.
I wanted to, so it was obviously I was inclined toward birds and working towards them. Initially, when we started Skimmers, it was a purely having some academic questions like, where do they nest and how do they nest and what's a nest survival. But in the first couple of years of my working, we realized that the nesting colonies that we were monitoring, nothing could survive on them. So our questions were all like incomplete and we couldn't answer what's happening. So we
Yeah.
just thought we need to do something to understand more about the species. And that's when the conservation part got incorporated in the project. But I think it is the sense of happiness that you have at the end that keeps you motivated to work. As I said again, it's a very challenging landscape to work. Though the dacoits are not there, but then you have other people present around, and like as I said, yeah, sand mining. But the miners have been very kind to us and very very supportive for the work. So they have been quite even interested that they when we say them that don't go and go ventures on this side where the birds are nesting, they have been supporting, and they have completely not moved into those sites. So I think it's a support from the local community members and the forest department specifically. Madhya Pradesh and Uttar Pradesh forest department have been very supportive to this work. So I think the support and the sense of happiness at the end is what keeps you going to do this work. Yes.
So, yeah, any advice for our young birders over there who are working in the field of conservation or to young researchers from your side?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I think I think the Indian ornithology has a lot of scope for. I think it can provide anything for anyone because we have 1,300 species in the country, and I think we still need to learn a lot about many of them. So it's a great time to come and work because there's so many organizations that have come. I remember when we started, there were a handful of organizations working towards ornithology or conservation, but we have many of them. But venture into the field only if you're passionate, because that's what can drive you in this field. Yes.
Yes. Wonderful. Wonderful. I think that's it from the questions section. Or do we have anything else? Let me just check it quickly. I think we have answered all of them. Oh, this one more popped up. Okay. Should I go with
Yes.
it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
Sure.
Yes.
What suggestion will give you for female ecologists who are working in the field of dealing with challenges?
And
Yeah, I think since you have been working in a challenging environment, yeah, it's a when I started, I think so there was nobody who did the entire Chambal survey with the forest department team before, so the department was very uncomfortable to have a female on board. But it took them a couple of days, and they realized it's not that uncomfortable situation to have a female as a teammate on network survey. But I would say the times have changed. We obviously there are sets of challenges for females, but it's not like a scenario which I can remember that probably some 20 years before, if some female had to work at Chambal, it would have been a very difficult scenario for everyone. But it's changed. There are a lot of females from Wildlife Institute of India that visit every year for work on Chambal River. But I would just give I would not suggest anybody to venture alone on the river. So have a team with you, have a companion with you to so that the challenges can be it's not that you alone has to face. And apart from that, I think you need to have good teammates. You need to have good colleagues who can understand the situation. So thankfully, I have been with teammates and I have been with some staff of forest department who have been very understanding. So I think that's my suggestion that if you want to work in this kind of landscape, have a good team with you who is very supportive. It makes a lot of difference to work.
wonderful. Thank you very much, Parveen. It has been a long discussion, huh? We've dealt so many questions. So thank you so much, Parveen, for sharing your
Yeah,
incredible journey in
yeah.
conserving the
Thank you
Indian
so
species
much. Yeah,
and the vital
thank you.
role of
Yes,
community involvement through initiatives like you
yeah,
said, the Guardians of Skimmer. So we
yes.
deeply appreciate the time and effort you have taken to be with us today, sharing your expertise, experiences, and challenges while
Yeah.
safeguarding this unique species. So for those of you who want to learn or contribute to Parveen's conservation
Yes.
efforts, and you can reach her through BNHS, and she
Yeah.
has already mentioned the email
Yeah.
at the final slide. So we hope this session has sparked some interest in the conservation of riverine birds and wetland ecosystems throughout our community over here. So once again, a big thank you to Parveen for an insightful and engaging session. So and thank you all who all participated today for your thoughtful questions and discussion. And we will continue to work together towards a better future for this species like Indian skimmer. So thank you very much, Parveen, again, and have a nice day. Thank
Thank
you
you
very much.
so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Take care. We'll see you.